Hi everyone, it's Pippa from the ADD-vantage Specialist Support Services for girls and women with ADHD. So I'm quite into research at the moment. I'm doing my masters, so I'm quite familiar with the research papers, and of course I've been very curious and looked at what's available on ADHD women. It is a little bit thin on the ground, to be fair, but one thing is 100% confirmed by research, and that is that women with ADHD are incredibly vulnerable to many mental health conditions and difficulties that their neurotypical peers are not. So ADHD itself is a neurodevelopmental condition, not a mental health problem, but women with this condition often have difficulties with their mental health at some point in their life. And one common difficulty is around excessive anxiety. So anxiety kind of describes uncomfortable, kind of fearful feelings that we experience from time to time when there is a threat or a perceived threat to our well-being, or well, not really our life, but you know what I mean. Like we feel that there is, you know, somehow we're kind of in some sort of danger, and we feel can be like a physical response. We might feel like a stomach ache. We might get all sweaty or something, and there can be kind of like psychological symptoms as well. So like a feeling of dread, of wanting to withdraw and to shrink back. And it is an entirely normal part of the human condition. Like it is there for a reason, and that reason is to keep us safe, to make sure we are vigilant and look after ourselves. So it is a part of the normal human condition. But sometimes for people with ADHD, and I would say a lot of times for women with ADHD, this becomes a more frequent pattern and can be a persistent issue, and it may become a barrier to living well and enjoying all aspects of our life. So we know that anxiety is hugely impacts on our brain function. We know that when we experience anxiety, it's like red sirens going off in our brain, alert, 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 and the amygdala is activated, and that's our kind of like our watchman, our protector kind of thing. And when it's alerted, our brain is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline, and these are kind of like stress chemicals, and that shuts down all our kind of logical, thoughtful, cognitive ability. So we're not able to analyse and sort of, you know, reason, is this a genuine threat? Is this level of response kind of appropriate? We are just heightened, like, you know, scanning the horizon, and it's quite a primitive thing. Now, if you can go from that to restoring your kind of natural sense of calm and inner peace reasonably quickly, then it probably isn't an issue. But what tends to happen for girls and women with ADHD is that they kind of get used to this anxious response, and we tend to get alerted to threats more frequently when they're not really threats. You know, we kind of get in a bit of a pattern, and we can spend more of our time heightened than our neurotypical peers. So just to give you an idea, your typical brained people spend about 80% of their time in their happy place, feeling nice and safe and comfortable, and maybe 20% of their time feeling a bit sort of heightened and a bit worried. That's kind of the normal division. For neurodiverse people, you can flip it sometimes. It can be that extreme. They spend 80% of their time heightened and only 20% in their safe, comfortable zone. It probably isn't typically that big a difference for ADHD. That might be more associated with autism, but just to give you an idea, you know of how bad it could be, you should probably bear that in mind. And it's probably going back to our childhood. The roots of this will be in our childhood, definitely, and it's even more so if our ADHD wasn't spotted, understood, wasn't supported. So we know that by the time a person with ADHD hits the age of 12, they have internalised a further 20,000 negative messages than their peers have, which is huge, isn't it? Like internalising all that negative. So it might be things they've heard, like people have said to them, you're too sensitive, you're not smart enough, you're lazy, you're rude, you're, I don't know, whatever, these types of things, and we bring them in on ourselves. That's 20,000 by the age of 12. I'm 48 now, no, nearly 48. I'm wondering what my count might be. Consequently, our self-esteem tends to be lower than our neurotypical peers as a result. And of course, we as girls long to fit in. We look at them and we want to be like them. We want to live like them. We want to, I don't know, we want them to recognise us as one of them. That is super important, particularly when we're girls. And we compare ourselves, don't we? And of course, we judge ourselves as coming up short all of the time. That can generate a sense of shame and guilt, which has no use whatsoever apart from to make you entirely miserable. It's incredibly undermining. And of course, you know, the core ADHD symptoms plus heightened emotions plus executive function mean that we've probably got a history of kind of like missing the mark, not fulfilling our own expectations or the expectations of others, probably experienced a huge amount of embarrassment and humiliation where we've got it wrong again and sabotaged our own kind of you know, hopes, dreams, aspirations, all of that. And I certainly recognise that to be true in my own case. When I look back at how I managed at school, I feel very sad for the girl that I was, because I did live constantly in a heightened state, worried about fitting in, worried about what to say, who to say it to, or when not to say it. So often I got in trouble for saying the wrong thing to the wrong person at the wrong time. And of course, as we know, girls, frankly, I'm not going to say it, but you know what they can be, and they run in packs, so it can be very miserable. And you know, if that happens to you more than once, you are going to be anxious about it happening again. So what can happen is, as we get older, we live more in that zone of high alert, waiting for the next kind of self-inflicted crisis to occur, hoping that we kind of spot it up and head it off at the pass and kind of mitigate the fallout. But because of that, we're kind of in this constant, you know, state of like, where's it coming from? Which direction will I be ready? Kind of state. We're often, of course, trying to hide our ADHD. We might not even know we've got it. If we do know we've got it, we still might be trying to hide it because we don't want to be judged somehow as less or broken or, you know, be a disappointment. And typically this, you know, leads to feelings of, well, exhaustion and overwhelm. And exhaustion, overwhelm obviously affect your ability to function and cope. So this is kind of this cycle sort of feeding itself. And the more often you are anxious, the more your brain gets used to being anxious. So those pathways are very familiar. And the more you kind of experience something, or the more you look for something, of course, the more your brain sort of turns your head in that direction, which isn't terribly helpful. There is a study that suggests that about 36% of women with ADHD could meet the criteria for generalised anxiety disorder. That's a clinical condition in the DSM. So that's huge. That's about a third of us. Now, if you're wondering what's the difference from being anxious and generalised anxiety disorder, well, I mean, it is the same, but I think for it to tip into disorder, it's about the amount of distress that it causes you and the barriers that it creates to your functioning. So if it's causing you to withdraw from your family and friends, if it's causing issues around work and relationships, if it's preventing you from going outside even, I mean, that can happen. And if it's been going on for a significant period of time, then that probably is the thing that tips you over into a disorder. Typically, to get a diagnosis, it would have to be persistent for at least 6 months. And I'm not suggesting that you all now, you know, go to the doctor and say, oh, I've got this generalised anxiety disorder, I need treatment. I'm not saying that. I just want to make you aware how many of us are living with symptoms that are, you know, that reach that threshold. The good news is, though, that you don't have to stay like this. Like, you don't have to. There are things that you can do for yourself. There are things that you can reach out for, which will help you address this, because it isn't a very healthy place to be. And I don't think it's a very sustainable state to live in either. So if you are worried about anxiety, Tell someone, let them know. I mean, you might be so good at covering it, they might not have an idea what's going on inside you, but share it with someone that you trust. Talk to them about it. Tell them what's happening for you, how it feels for you, the things that set you off, and see if they can shine a light for you and make any suggestions. If it really is a huge barrier for you and it's preventing you from living the life that you want, then you should really go to your GP and talk to him or her about how you're feeling. I was about to say obviously, but it isn't obvious. Mindfulness and meditative practice can really help manage anxiety and bring it down. So that is something you could do for yourself. If you do go to the GP, you will be offered kind of CBT treatment, talking therapies, like self-guided kind of help, and or medication as well. That's what would happen if you went to the GP, but you wouldn't be left. And I think it's really important that you understand that you don't have to be this way, that there is something that you can do about it, and the first step is to tell someone. I would really encourage you to do that, because like nothing changes if nothing changes. So that would be the first step. I'm going to make some more videos talking about how mindfulness and meditation might help, talking about some other tools in the kit, and even talking about how anxiety could be a friend to us as well. So I hope that you will find some time to watch those. Thanks for listening. Bye.